pretty much know what's above ground at Alcatraz Island.
But now a new study finds there are hidden buildings and tunnels underneath the prison yard.
Alcatraz held America's most dangerous criminals, or so we thought. When the FBI uncovered a tunnel beneath the prison, what they found flipped the story on its head.
Legendary system of underground tunnels, and our ground-penetrating radar has just uncovered an intriguing anomaly.
Dust-covered chambers, secret passages, and silent evidence hinted at something far more complex. Could this island have played a hidden role in something much bigger? You might think you know Alcatraz, but this discovery could change that in ways no one expected. Secrets beneath Alcatraz. Most people think they have seen everything Alcatraz has to offer. They come, walk the same halls, hear the same stories. Nothing really changes. At least, that's what they believed.
Well, I mean, it's right before you, steel and concrete. It was the largest steel-reinforced concrete building in the world.
But beneath the polished tours and worn concrete, something unexpected was uncovered. Something even the FBI didn't see coming. Alcatraz didn't start as a prison. In the 1800s, it served as the site for San Francisco Bay's first lighthouse. The rocky island's isolated position made it a perfect military stronghold. They arrived in 1853 and built a fortress to protect the harbor. By 1907, it had officially been designated as the Western United States Military Prison. Just a few years later, construction crews expanded the island's facilities, and in 1912, the main prison block was completed. Over time, inmates from across the country were shipped there, most of them troublemakers in other federal prisons who required strict supervision.
Alcatraz could hold the worst of the worst. It could hold middle-class violent prisoners.
The location worked in Alcatraz's favor. Cold waters, sharp currents, and great distance from the mainland made escape nearly impossible.
This is a terrific facility, but no one has been known to escape from Alcatraz and survive.
And during its prime in the 1930s and 40s, Alcatraz held some of the country's most dangerous criminals. Names like Al Capone and Machine Gun Kelly added to its tough reputation. They were locked behind thick walls with nowhere to run, or so it seemed. In its 29 years of operation, 36 inmates attempted to escape. 14 separate tries. Most failed. Some were caught, others died trying.
It is a point at which the body has gone into such an advanced stage of decay that it's almost unrecognizable as a human body.
But one case still haunts the island. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, Clarence and John, vanished in 1962. No bodies were found, no proof of death, and no clear explanation of how they slipped through the tight security. This escape didn't just spark questions, it opened a floodgate of theories.
The FBI concludes that these three men have drowned. Others are quick to say, maybe something else happened.
One idea stood out among the rest. What if a tunnel had helped them? What if something had been hiding beneath the prison all alone? For decades, it was just a rumor. But that changed. When investigators returned to Alcatraz years later, they weren't there for the views. They were investigating something buried beneath the surface. Literally, what they discovered made them stop cold.
The rec yard is back that way, so we're going to be particularly looking at the walls on this side.
It was a structure hidden in plain sight, concealed beneath layers of earth and concrete. They had found what many thought was just a myth. What it contained left even hardened FBI agents pale. We'll get to that. But first, you have to understand just how impossible escaping Alcatraz was supposed to be. It wasn't just the guards or the barbed wire. It was the island itself. So how did three men manage to outsmart everything? And more importantly, how long has that hidden tunnel been waiting to be found? Raft, dunnies, and a tunnel.
It has been exactly 50 years since three men pulled off, escaping like Houdini from Alcatraz.
Following its designation as a federal prison, Alcatraz was transformed into what many believed to be the most secure facility in the country, Iron bars were reinforced, guard towers sprang up at key positions, and the daily routine for inmates became a strict system of checks and rules.
It had 6 guard towers with over 60 guards. It had the highest ratio of guards to prisoners of any prison.
Every move was watched. Every sound was noted. Yet, beneath all that control, something was forming. Something that wouldn't be discovered until much later, when the FBI came back with questions of their own. Frank Morris had been through the prison system before. Arrested for bank robbery, burglary, and known for slipping out of high-security facilities, he arrived at Alcatraz in January of 1960.
He'd been in and out of the system since the age of 13, mostly for robbery charges.
Later that year, John Anglin joined him, followed by his brother Clarence in early 1961. Another inmate, Alan West, had already been at Alcatraz since 1957. These weren't strangers thrown together by chance. The 4 men had known each other from past stints and were now placed in adjoining cells. That was all they needed.
Wow, so they're side by side.
Side by side. You want to take a closer look?
Can we?
Their conversations began quietly during the nights. Ideas started forming. Morris, recognized for his sharp mind, stepped in as the planner. They were determined, and soon a plan began to take shape. It started with discarded saw blades from the prison workshop. Then came metal spoons from the dining hall. With parts from an old vacuum cleaner, they built a small drill. It wasn't much to look at, but it worked.
And many of the ideas, like the life vests, came right out of the prison library.
Each man took his turn scraping and drilling around the vents under their sinks, carefully loosening the concrete. To hide their progress, they used painted cardboard to cover the holes. And when the sound got too loud, Morris would sit and play his accordion during the prison's music hour, when soft tunes filled the air to keep inmates calm. Behind those cell walls, just out of sight, was an unused service tunnel. It had been part of the prison's original structure and was no longer monitored. The men discovered it and started using it.
Okay, this is the back side of one of the vent holes.
So this is where they tunneled through.
Yep.
Right here.
They climbed through, up onto the roof of their cell block, and began to turn the space into a workshop, hidden from view. In that hidden space, they began building. Over several months, they stitched together a makeshift rubber raft measuring 6 feet by 14 feet. It was crafted from more than 50 raincoats stolen one by one, then glued and sealed.
They also knew that there was no tracking of the issue of raincoats. The guards never said, well, how many raincoats are out?
Alongside the raft, they made life vests, also from the raincoats, planning for a cold and dangerous journey through the San Francisco Bay. But they weren't finished yet. They knew they had to make it seem like they were asleep in bed each night. So, they sculpted dummy heads out of soap, toilet paper, and cement dust. The faces were painted with materials from the art room. Hair was taken from the barbershop floor and glued to the heads. These fake heads were placed on their pillows, while the men worked behind the walls.
They could put those down and it would appear that they were sleeping, and they had all the time in the world to do that.
But even with all their planning, something still doesn't add up. How did they manage to move so freely through such a tightly controlled space? The guards never noticed anything unusual. The nightly checks didn't raise a single alarm. Everything about the escape seemed too well-timed, too clean. For years, investigators tried to piece together the gaps. The men had the tools, the timing, and the plan. But what they didn't have, at least on record, was a clear path out. That question still hangs in the air. How did they really get off the island? The more you look at it, the more it feels like something is missing, something no one has fully explained. One without a trace. Everything was quiet that night, too quiet for a place like Alcatraz, but deep inside the prison walls, something was already set in motion. On June 11, 1962, the escape plan that had taken months to prepare finally came alive.
ever since brothers John and Clarence Anglin, along with inmate Frank Morris, disappeared from Alcatraz in 1962.
In their cells, the inmates left behind painted dummy heads with real human hair to fool the guards doing bed checks. They looked so real that not even a passing flashlight would raise suspicion.
Dummy heads made of plaster, paper mache, paint, and real human hair to fool the guard.
Meanwhile, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers slipped into the opening behind the wall. They had one shot at this, but not everyone made it out. Clarence West had trouble removing the grill on his vent. It got stuck, and time was slipping fast. He stayed behind while the others pushed forward. Once inside the tunnel, Morris and the Anglins moved quickly. They climbed up a series of pipes to reach the roof, careful not to make noise. From there, they made their way down through the smokestack connected to the bakery. But the prison's roof was just one part of the challenge.
They climbed up a network of pipes and plumbing before they made it here to the roof.
Ahead of them stood two tall fences laced with barbed wire. Somehow, they got over them and then scrambled down a rocky slope that led to the shore. The water was dark and freezing, but they had no choice. Around 10 p.m., the three men pushed off the beach using their homemade raft. What happened after that moment is still a mystery.
That legendary escape is still one of the greatest mysteries in American history.
The next morning, prison guards found something strange. There was no movement in the cells. When they looked closer, they realized what had happened. Those weren't sleeping inmates. They were fakes. And by the time they raised the alarm, Morris and the Anglins were long gone.
Jesus Christ!
West confessed everything when questioned. The escapees, he said, were headed for Angel Island. And soon, a huge manhunt kicked off. Over the next week, pieces of the escape floated in. On June 14th, the Coast Guard found a paddle floating near the shore. Later that day, a bundle wrapped in rubber was discovered by workers.
Paddle-like pieces of wood and one of the life vests washed up near Angel Island.
It contained photographs and personal belongings linked to the Anglin brothers. A week later, pieces of the raft washed ashore near the Golden Gate Bridge. Another day passed, and a tattered life vest turned up not far from there. But the three men were gone. No one ever saw them again. And as for that narrow shaft they crawled through, it raised an unsettling question. How many other forgotten spaces lie beneath Alcatraz? Were they the first to find it, or just the first to make it out? Rumors the FBI couldn't bury. People thought the mystery had ended when the prison closed its doors in 1963. But in some ways, it had only just begun. Even though the FBI ruled that the escapees drowned in the waters surrounding the island, that answer never really satisfied everyone.
FBI has reproduced as a great interpretive tool for the National Park Service.
From the very first year after the breakout, new claims kept surfacing. Family members of John and Clarence Anglin said they received holiday cards signed by the brothers. Some even swore they got phone calls. The man's mother reportedly got a bouquet of flowers delivered to her every Mother's Day, year after year, with no note and no known sender. It didn't stop there. When she passed away in 1973, two tall men showed up at her funeral. According to those who were there, they wore heavy makeup and stayed away from the crowd. To the family, it was obvious who they were. Could it really have been them? Had they managed to do the impossible? Had they broken out of one of the most secure prisons in the world?
Alcatraz was a federal penitentiary for nearly 3 decades.
And then vanished into thin air? It was a theory that wouldn't go away. People could not help but wonder if the FBI had jumped to conclusions too quickly. What made the rumors harder to ignore was what came next. Long after the prison gates were locked for good, strange stories kept circulating. There were rumors about hidden passages, long-forgotten service routes, and access shafts that never appeared in the official diagrams.
After they knocked off the air vent, they ended up here on the roof of the cell house and ran straight to freedom.
Old maintenance workers hinted at blueprints that showed parts of the structure that were sealed off or never used. Some claimed to have seen locked doors that led to places no inmate or guard ever spoke about. Others swore that certain areas of the island were quietly built over, burying tunnels and rooms that no one had permission to talk about.
After squeezing through this cement wall, they climbed up a network of pipes and plumbing.
There were even reports from tourists and former staff who described hearing sounds like doors creaking and echoing footsteps coming from areas that had supposedly been closed for decades. Some chalked it up to old buildings settling, but others weren't so sure. The more these stories piled up, the more people began to believe that Alcatraz wasn't just a prison. It was a place built with layers. If you take a look behind me,
That's the air vent that he widened to escape through.
both above and below. And maybe those layers held secrets the public was never meant to find out. So now the question isn't just whether the escapees survived, it's whether the prison itself was hiding something all along. The letter that changed everything. There are some things that don't add up, and when they start to surface, they leave behind more questions than answers. The FBI officially closed their investigation in 1979, deciding that Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers most likely drowned in the San Francisco Bay.
And escaped into the San Francisco Bay, and that you got to give it to them. They broke the system.
That could have been the end of it. But something changed in January 2018. A letter came to light. This wasn't just a rumor cooked up by conspiracy theorists. The note claimed to be from John Anglin himself. According to the letter, he was still alive. "My name is John Anglin," the letter begins. "I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962. He said he had escaped from Alcatraz with his brother Clarence and Frank Morris in June of 1962. He described himself as being 83 years old and in poor health. He said he had cancer. He insisted they all made it out alive that night, but just barely.
It adds, "I am 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer."
There was more. John wrote that if the authorities guaranteed him medical help and a light sentence, he would reveal his current location. The letter also claimed Clarence died in 2008 and Frank in 2005. All this was handed over to the FBI 5 years earlier. In 2013, after being received by the San Francisco Police Department, the FBI tested the letter for fingerprints, but apparently they couldn't get a match. Then it sat in silence, unreleased, hidden from the public until someone decided to bring it forward. Why wait 5 years? And what else hasn't been shared?
They made the final push out. They wanted to make sure that no one was on that route.
It's not the first time people have asked whether the full story of that escape ever made it out. Some have long believed the FBI never told the entire truth, not just about the escape, but about what was found in the aftermath. Now, with the re-emergence of this letter, those suspicions only grow stronger. What if the tunnel found under the prison wasn't just a leftover utility shaft? What if it had been mapped out, repaired? And what if someone found it not long after the escape, but chose to keep it quiet?
They're one of the great mysteries of the 20th century, and everybody gloms onto it because they love when an underdog.
Wenth, why would they do that? Was it to preserve the reputation of the prison system? Or was the truth simply too embarrassing to admit? That 3 inmates outsmarted the guards, the system, and everyone who told them escape was impossible. The United States Marshals Service, unlike the FBI, never officially closed the case.
In exchange for not being charged, West gave up what he claimed was the escape plan to the FBI.
As of 2022, they released updated age progression images, hoping someone out there might recognize one of the men. Maybe they are still alive. Maybe someone helped them. Maybe the real truth was buried under layers of reports, statements, and sealed evidence. Then there is the bigger question. Was this letter real? Or just someone playing a sick game with an old case?
Later on, what they do is they start to create papier-mâché vents as sort of a cover for the holes that they're creating.
That's what makes things complicated.
On one hand, it could be a hoax, written by someone chasing attention. On the other hand, it could be genuine. Maybe even the only message ever sent by one of the escapees after all these years in hiding. Either way, it wasn't something the FBI could completely ignore. Someone mailed that letter. Someone typed those words. Someone out there knows something. And if even a part of it is real, then maybe the tunnel wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning. The Buried Fort. Back in 2019, a team of researchers uncovered something strange right beneath the old prison yard of Alcatraz. It wasn't debris or cracked concrete. Instead, they found the remains of an entirely different structure. Not something from the prison days, but something much older. This wasn't the result of a random guess either. For years, archaeologists had quietly believed that the island held more than just the story of inmates and prison breaks.
The thermal readings still aren't giving me enough detail to determine what it is.
Some even suspected that Alcatraz was built on top of a Civil War-era military site.
Was a pivotal chapter in the war and foreshadowed the downfall of the Confederacy.
But how do you test that kind of theory without digging up a protected landmark? The answer came in the form of advanced technology. Using a combination of ground-penetrating radar and high-resolution laser scans, the researchers started mapping what lay just below the surface. With the help of old maps and photographs, they began to piece together what was hidden beneath.
They also examined historical photographs to contrast what the high-tech scans discovered with archival records.
What they found confirmed their suspicions. Buried only centimeters below the surface were ammunition magazines, earthwork traverses, and tunnels. The fact that the prison yard's concrete flooring sat directly above these features, in some spots without any real buffer, shocked even the most seasoned experts.
They're going to be in the southern region somewhere, because why?
It looked as if the modern prison had simply been layered right on top of the old fort. But why would anyone build that way? Historians think it was a decision made for speed and cost. When Alcatraz was being transformed into a federal prison, construction teams might have found it easier to leave the old military structures alone and just pour concrete over them. As time passed, light layers of concrete were added to keep erosion in check, especially during the island's long, stormy seasons. Still, one thing stood out above everything else. No one expected the structures beneath to be so well preserved. Some of the tunnels were practically untouched. Others hinted at more complex passageways buried even deeper.
That's unbelievable. So, once they punch through this, where do they go from here?
Could there be additional routes no one has ever seen? And if so, what purpose did they serve? Were they part of the original military design? Or had someone repurposed them later? That question becomes even more pressing when placed against the backdrop of the 1962 escape. If these tunnels existed, is it possible that the escapees somehow discovered them? Were they used as part of the plan, or were they too well hidden at the time? The official reports make no mention of any underground military structures being involved. But then again, this discovery only came decades later. And the most interesting part? The researchers still believe more tunnels are waiting to be found. That means even after all the scans and measurements, they haven't uncovered everything.
Appear to be about 2 feet underground. It looks like it could be a tunnel heading right towards the main cell block.
There are still pockets of land beneath Alcatraz that haven't been fully mapped, areas that could hold more secrets, maybe even clues that would challenge everything the public thought it knew about that prison, and the escape that turned it into legend. Every new layer exposed makes the surface version of events seem less complete. Maybe the prison wasn't as sealed off as authorities believed. And maybe those 3 men weren't just lucky. They might have known more than anyone thought. Underground Railroad Theory. There is a theory that keeps popping up whenever people talk about the Alcatraz escape, one that has quietly passed between curious minds and conspiracy circles for years. Some believe the tunnels beneath the prison weren't just forgotten leftovers from a military era. According to this theory, those old passages were part of a secret escape route. And he decided in his head that if he broke through the bricks, he'd be in the Spanish tunnels. The idea might sound like something out of a novel, but for some, it makes more sense than the official version that says the men drowned in the bay. It didn't help that the existence of those tunnels stayed hidden from the public for so long. Once the underground structures were finally brought to light, people began to question how much the authorities really knew at the time of the escape. If a network of tunnels was there the whole time, could it have played a role in how Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers vanished without a trace? And if so, why wasn't that part of the investigation? Some researchers believe the tunnels were sealed off or buried under concrete during the prison's construction, but that hasn't stopped others from thinking the escapees found a way in, maybe through a crack in the flooring or a forgotten access point somewhere deep inside the prison walls. It's hard to ignore the possibility, especially when the escape itself was already so well planned. The men built decoys, climbed pipes, and navigated rooftops. So why not add a hidden road beneath their feet? It's also worth noting how quickly the official explanation was pushed forward. The idea that the men drowned was accepted early and repeated for decades. But no bodies were ever recovered, and there were no clear signs of anyone dying at sea. The tunnel theory, on the other hand, suggests a very different picture, one where the escape was helped by something right beneath the surface. People who support the Underground Railroad theory often point to how quiet the government was about the structures beneath the prison. Why wait so long to mention them? Why wasn't that information shared during the original investigation? Could it be that the authorities had their suspicions but chose not to make them public? And if there really was an escape route below the prison, who knew about it? Was it purely by chance that the escapees stumbled across it? Or did someone help them? Someone who knew the island better than most? Of course, there is no hard proof to confirm any of this. But that's the nature of conspiracy theories. They thrive in places where answers are missing. And when it comes to Alcatraz, plenty of questions are still on the table. Could the men have used a hidden route that was never mentioned in the files? Is it possible the real escape path was underground all along? And if that's true, what else hasn't been uncovered yet? Prohibition-era tunnel theory. The cold stone walls of Alcatraz have always held secrets. But this one, it raised more questions than answers. Some believe the tunnels hidden beneath the prison for decades were part of something much bigger than just escape plans. As word spread, a new theory began to take shape, not just from historians or researchers, but from those who have always believed Alcatraz held more than it let on. According to conspiracy theorists, the tunnels date back to the Prohibition era, long before the prison became a federal penitentiary. As the theory goes, the tunnels might have been built to transport alcohol illegally during the 1920s, back when the country had banned it. With San Francisco just across the water, Alcatraz may have served as a hidden transfer point between suppliers and underground buyers. Some even claim the military looked the other way, or worse, played a part in it. The design of the tunnels adds more mystery to the claims. They aren't random or messy. The layout is neat, almost planned. Some allege they connect key parts of the island that had no clear reason to be joined, unless there was something going on beneath the surface. A few former workers have even spoken off the record, hinting at unusual construction methods that don't match the prison's blueprints. Of course, official reports dismiss these claims. They say there's no evidence to support the idea that these tunnels were used for smuggling, or that they even existed before the prison. But when you stack all the strange details together, it's hard not to wonder. And then there's the escape. Could those men have somehow discovered this secret tunnel system and used it to vanish without a trace? Or did they stumble on something even more shocking while crawling through the dark? Something that changed everything? It's the kind of thought that leaves more questions than answers. Some say the government has always known. Others believe the discovery was kept quiet because of what it might expose. It could damage reputations, raise questions about Alcatraz's history, or even point fingers at people who were never supposed to be involved. But here's the thing, no matter how strange it sounds, there's always a thread of truth in every rumor. That's what makes it all so hard to ignore. So ask yourself, was Alcatraz just a prison, or was it hiding something far more complex beneath the surface? Whether you believe in secret smuggling routes or not, one thing is certain. The story of Alcatraz isn't as simple as we have been told. That prison has layers, both literally and historically, and every layer peeled back reveals something even stranger than the last. Maybe the real mystery isn't just about escape. Maybe it's about what was buried to keep others from digging too deep. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There is a lot more where this came from. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.